Hey there, it's Lara here with your weekly Wednesday video. This one's for the week of April 22nd to 28th, 2020. I almost said 2019. Remember 2019 when we thought things were tricky? And here we are in 2020, right? Who knew? We knew big things were going to happen, right? We talked about it. We talked about it a lot. But nobody really knew exactly what that might look like. And we're finding out, aren't we? So here we are on Wednesday, April 22nd, and I'm really glad that you're joining me as always. Or if this is your first time here, thanks for stopping by. I hope you stick around. I'd love to know what you think about what I have to say here. And, if you have any questions or you're curious about something, then please let me know. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're managing, all things considered. There's been a lot of ups and downs, hasn't there? And I'm not sure that's going to change anytime soon. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's not. So we are all kind of trying to get used to this. I, like many of you, am very susceptible to the collective sort of energy, right? And susceptible to feeling the collective pulse. And sometimes that can be really tricky when you're navigating that on top of all your own stuff. But I know we're all doing the best we can, right? Given the circumstance. And Taurus season is upon us. The sun moved into Taurus on Sunday. So happy birthday if you're a Taurus sun sign. And we have a new moon in Taurus happening. Where I am, it's happening tonight. And this is what the focus of the video is going to be about today. And Taurus is this sort of grounded, fixed earth energy, and tends to lend us that feeling of groundedness. Slow and steady wins the race is kind of Taurus's motto. But there's a few things going on with this Taurus new moon that will sort of throw a wrench into that energy. And we're going to talk about that. There's going to be a plot twist or two that happens in relation to this Taurus new moon. So we're going to talk about that in the video, and a couple of other relevant things. What I want to let you know is that as I'm recording this, the moon is still in Aries, but about to transition into Taurus. And she will be in Taurus for a few days until Saturday. And then on Saturday, she will transition into Gemini and move into Cancer on Monday. And as you may or may not know, I'm a big fan of the moon. To put it simply, connecting with the moon's energy helps to navigate, right? It helps us to navigate the day-to-day ebbs and flows of life. And if you're interested in learning how to do that, I do have a free resource on my website available to you. And so you can just click the link below and head over there to grab it if you want. So I guess before we get to talking about the new moon in Taurus, one thing that I want to mention to you that's also happening this week is that Pluto is stationing retrograde. So and we know, Pluto's been a key player in what's gone on all through 2019 and into 2020, right? This year we have that sort of backdrop of Pluto and Jupiter conjuncting 3 times. One just happened. We have it happening again in June and again in November this year. And so that is a bit of a backdrop for the events that are transpiring this year. And then, we've got this Pluto retrograde happening that is in a conjunction with Jupiter, right? So that energy is sort of there. as an undercurrent. And I've talked about this aspect a couple of videos ago, I think. So you can have a listen to that if you're interested. But I wanted to say a word on the Pluto retrograde before I get into talking about the new moon in Taurus. So Pluto retrograde happens every year, as I mentioned, for about 5 months at a time. So it's not unusual, right? The thing that makes Pluto retrogrades, differ from each other is obviously the sign that they're happening in, the house that they're happening in your chart. Pluto moves very slowly, so it takes a long time to transit a house, or a sign. And of course, the conversations that it's having with other planets. In this case, specifically with Jupiter, right? So when Pluto goes retrograde, like any planetary retrograde, it is a time of reflection on whatever the themes of that planet are, okay, to put it simply. So Pluto retrograde is a time for us to sort of reflect on issues of power and control and, maybe our fears, our obsessions, our compulsions, these kinds of things, right? And ultimately transformation, how we can transform those things. It is like a big yearly psychic detox, if you will, right? When I say psychic, I'm talking about our psyche, right? Our deep psyche. So, or to detoxify what's not working in our lives, to purge the toxins. And that can take the form of anything, like habits, obsessions, compulsions, fears, secrets, people, relationships even, or any wounding, psychological wounding that we are dealing with and processing. So, and anything, it's a time of kind of taking a look at anything that has power over us, power and control over us, right? And taking back that power. So not allowing external forces to be to control us or to be our source of power either. Because I've said this many times before, power comes from within. And I don't want you to it's a time to restore our own self-agency, right? To take back our power. But there is a good way to do that and a not so good way to do that, right? And so I think we can see an example of this if we take a look at, it's sort of an obvious thing where we see people that are protesting the social distancing measures, and they just want everything to go back to normal and everybody to go back to work, and they think this is all a big conspiracy theory, and the government is trying to control us, right? And so those people in a sense want to take back their power from the government, and it's like, you can't tell me what to do, sort of thing. So I'm just going to say that's not the optimal way to handle this energy. When I say take back your power and restore a sense of sort of self-agency, the really important thing to remember when it comes to Pluto, and particularly because we have Jupiter involved in the conversation here, right, is that we want to do things. We want to take back our power in a way that is in integrity, right? And a way that is focused on being very ethical, focused on, strong morals, that sort of thing, right? And so that's kind of what's going on with Pluto retrograde, and that's happening between April 25th and October 4th. And because Pluto moves very slowly, that only spans a couple of degrees, from about 24 Capricorn to 22 Capricorn, right? Now, ideally, this can work for us. This can be a spiritual catalyst of sorts, this Pluto retrograde conjunct Jupiter. So it can be about like really major positive transformation and deep changes in, our worldview, in how we, in our belief system, in our ethics and morals, right? Jupiter. Changes of fortune even can happen with this influence. But the downside, I already kind of mentioned, but the downside can also be a crisis of faith with Pluto and Jupiter. And the potential sort of expansion of, the darker forces. I mean, not only, the expansion of, or the growth of the virus, we're seeing that exponential growth, right? It's a real thing. Very Pluto Jupiter there, but also, the growth of power in the, the not so good sense of the word, right? So power, greed, fear, propaganda, conspiracy theories, these kinds of things, right? We can see that happening under this influence as well. Ultimately, Pluto retrograde, it's like the image that comes to mind, it's like the rotor-rooter, right? Like cleaning out the pipes sort of thing, all the gunk in the pipes. And so that's kind of, this detox that can be going on for us around this time. I got this weird, I was watching Outlander the other night, and there was a scene where they were looking for maggots to put on a wound. I'm not going to give away all the details in case you haven't seen it, but maggots to put on a wound to eat the dead flesh, right? To help clean out the wound and heal the wound. And it's almost like, I hate to say it, but it's kind of a Pluto, a very Pluto symbolism, right? Pluto retrograde symbolism, like not too nice, but in the end has a powerful and beneficial result. So, like I said, operating with integrity, with high moral standards, ethical standards is really the best way to approach this, and to focus on our self-agency. What does that mean for us? How can we, in a time that feels so unstable and so uncertain, how can we take back the power, in the true sense of the word, of our own, lives, kind of thing. So hopefully that makes sense to you. I wanted to spend just a few minutes talking about that because I think it's important. And now we're going to launch into more about the new moon in Taurus that's happening. So Taurus is a fixed earth sign, right? And it's about what's tangible and what sustains us, really. So, things like nature and agriculture and our resources, including our money, but our other material resources as well, about our bodies and our food supply, and, how we sustain ourselves and how we make a stable place for ourselves in the world, and how we, Taurus can be very attached to things and doesn't like to let go. It's a fixed sign, right? And likes to hang on to things. And so is slow to change, right? Taurus is ruled by the planet Venus. And Venus is about things like love and beauty and aesthetic and our relationship and, what we're drawn to, what we're attracted to, that sort of thing. So there is this sense of, with Taurus, of slow, like I said earlier, slow and steady wins the race, right? Of getting back to basics, of taking pleasure in the simple things and the world of the five senses, right? Pleasure in the being, and in connecting to the earth and to nature very much. So, that's the energy of Taurus. And we know, of course, that a new moon is generally a time of new beginnings, right? When the sun and the moon come together to birth something new. And so, we have this new moon in Taurus. But the difference here with this new moon is that this new moon is in a conversation with Uranus, who is a disruptor, right? Uranus is not about the stability. So these energies together can be quite interesting. And then we also have another piece of the puzzle. I'm going to show you the chart in a second. And that is Saturn. Saturn in the early degrees of Aquarius is squaring Uranus in Taurus. And it's within a few degrees sort of thing right now, but it's going to get closer. And in 2021, we're going to see that happen, come into a square 3 times. And so this new moon is kind of giving us a taste of what's to come, right? So, here we are again in this time of real uncertainty and things feel anything but stable. And the Taurus new moon, in one sense, is offering us this opportunity to get back to basics, right? I think a lot of us are focusing on that right now. What can we do to help ourselves feel grounded and calm? How can we, some of us are thinking about planting gardens. We're doing that. We used to have a garden years and years ago, and I might have said this before already, we got rid of it, and now this year we're going to revive that. We're thinking about our food supply and food security and these sorts of things, right? And our material security. And really, I think a lot of us are trying to gain a sense of control, in a sense, and normalcy through the simple things, right? And appreciating the simple things. And that's very Taurus. But then we have this Uranus and the Saturn piece coming in, and they are lending some tension and potentially some, like I said, some plot twists. So, I was going to mention to you that you may or may not know this already, but when I was thinking about this new moon, I thought about the fact that the Buddha was a Taurus, right? And there's that Zen Buddhist saying that you may have heard, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water, right? And so it is drawing our attention to the importance of the simple things, and that those simple acts they are what's really spiritual, and they can connect us to our spirituality, and that we can be the most enlightened being on the planet, but we still have to eat. We still have to have shelter, these kinds of things. So there's actually part of the story of Buddha is, he at one point, he was starving himself almost to death, and had a realization that he could not maintain a state of sort of joy if he didn't nourish himself, if he didn't get nourishment. And so a maiden, and I'm paraphrasing this story, you can look it up for yourself, but a maiden came and offered him a simple bowl of rice porridge. And that was life affirming, right? Literally sort of brought him back to life, that simple bowl of rice porridge. That's Taurus. And that's potentially, the kind of things that we want to focus on over the course of Taurus season. But I'm going to show you the chart right now. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about the Uranus-Saturn players in this new moon. So here's the chart. And, you know, what I really want to draw your attention to in this case is the new moon. So there we have the moon at 3 degrees Taurus, and the sun, of course, right beside the moon, right, coming together to birth something new. That's the point of the cycle that we're in, the moon cycle, the monthly moon cycle. And you'll see how close. Uranus is within 3 degrees of the moon and the sun. And Saturn up here in Aquarius, at the first degree of Aquarius, is in a square, right? Within a couple of degrees, a square to this new moon. And it, you know, within sort of 5 degrees of a square to Uranus, which again is going to build over the course of 2021. So what does that mean? That's all I really want to show you. Of course, there's other things on the chart, but that's all I want to show you right now. So Uranus is a catalyst. It's a disruptor. It's a rebel. It's this energy of shaking things up, right? Shaking the foundations. And it's very future focused and about the new and the unique and anything but status quo sort of thing, right? It's also about technology, you know, that sort of thing, and the collective in a sense. Uranus rules Aquarius, right? Which is where Saturn is sitting right now. Saturn, incidentally, used to rule Aquarius before Uranus was discovered. And so they are kind of considered co-rulers of Aquarius. So basically, you know, what's happening with Saturn in conversation with this new moon is that the energy of Taurus wants to focus on what's simple, what's stable, what's grounded, you know, our relationship to the earth and our 5 senses, and our, you know, the basics and our literal survival kind of thing, physical survival. And Uranus is there saying, but you can't do it the way you've always done it. Things have to change. Things are changing. Uranus doesn't ask us if we want things to change. It just comes in and, you know, it's like fireworks, literally. You get that image of fireworks, or like all the neurons firing in the brain, right? That's Uranus. Lightning striking is Uranus. And so Uranus is shaking up, you know, shaking up that stability. And no guff, right? Like really, you don't need me to tell you that. But that's what's happening. And so we are being faced with this. Our stability is being shaken. We're in uncharted territory, right? Things are unpredictable. What are we going to do about it? And so this is where these two energies have to be merged, or are merging. This idea of innovation and inventiveness, very Uranian, in relation to Taurus, right? Those themes that I talked about. So this kind of Taurian approach to discovering new ways of, so, you know, kind of this trial and error, one step at a time approach to you know, new ways to use technology to support the natural world, to support perhaps farming, to support our resources, right? And new ways to connect with nature, using science and technology, and doing things differently, really doing things differently in relation to all those Taurus themes that I spoke about. And then Saturn and Uranus, like I said, are squaring each other, right, around this time. And so this is bringing some tension between the old Saturn and the new Uranus, right? Past and future, between the tried and tested sort of, you know, traditional ways, Saturn, and the new and innovative ways, Uranus. Between the rules, Saturn, and maybe disrupting the rules, right? The way we've always done things, what we're used to. Definitely tension between stability and change, right? So this can feel like, like Uranus is wanting to force the change. Saturn is wanting to restrict it, right? Like that's tension. And we may feel that in relation to this new moon, and understand that that's something that we're being asked to work with over this next couple of years, really, and potentially beyond, right? So how are we going to, like, we can't do things the way we've always done them. So how are we gonna approach that? How can the old and the new work together? How can we create a more stable, sustainable future for all of us and for ourselves individually, right? What does that look like, and how can we do that? So if we're willing to work with this energy of this new moon proactively, this can really end up being a time when challenges are catalyzed into opportunities. We just have to go slow and steady, take it one step at a time, focus on the simple things, but new ways of approaching that. Don't be afraid to try something different. We're being asked to embrace the change right now, to think outside, the box, and rather than resisting it. So that's really what's coming up here. And the Taurus new moon, when we're talking about individually, which I'm getting to right now, I'm going to go through each of the signs and speak to the house that this is happening in for each of us. It can feel like we want to focus on the simple things. We are trying to stay grounded. We're concerned about our resources, about our security, about those things we're attached to. But Uranus is like, a bit of a fireworks display in that area of our chart, and catalyzing a new approach to building something solid and sustainable, and natural, in relation to Taurus. So I hope that makes sense to you. It's difficult to articulate this in one neat and tidy picture, because the energies are so divergent, right? It's and so almost paradoxical, right? Like we may feel very much like we are being asked to be in two places at once, the past and the future. And it can be challenging. And so how do we navigate that? We have to ground ourselves, right, into the simple things. So having said that, I'm going to go through each of the signs, and please listen to the introduction, because, me going through the sign is not enough. Like just telling you what area of the chart this is happening in for you is not really going to tell you much unless you've listened to the introduction. And anybody that has planets, points, around that, the early degrees of the fixed signs, because the new moon is happening around the 3-degree mark, potentially, even the late degrees of the mutable signs. But we've got the cardinal signs, not the mutable signs, but really the fixed signs of Taurus, Scorpio, Leo, and Aquarius. If you've got planets, points, around those degrees, early degrees of the fixed signs, this will be something that is really in your awareness. But and again, I've been saying this a lot lately. Nobody's really escaping these energies, right? The energies are huge. They are playing out on the collective. We're all part of the collective. So even though we may not feel it, or some of us may feel it more profoundly than others in our personal lives, excuse me, we are witnessing it, right? Whether that be happening in other people's lives that are close to us or just on the collective stage. So we're not really escaping an awareness of the situation, and nobody's really going to get out of the situation the same as they were before it started, right? There's no going back. And I don't say that to scare you. I just say it to emphasize that point of like resistance is futile in a sense, right? We really need to embrace what the future holds and, not resist it as best we can. And that will, again, allow us the capacity to turn challenges into opportunities moving forward. So, okay, I'm going to start going through the signs now. So we've got, we'll begin with Taurus, because Taurus, this is your new moon and it's happening in your first house of the self, right? And so Taurus, for you, Taurus rising, mostly Taurus sun, Taurus moon as well. This is a new beginning catalyzed by Uranus, in relation to who you are out in the world, how you present yourself, how you approach the outside world, how you approach your own well-being, your physical vitality. And a new way of doing things in this area of life. And it may be difficult. Taurus, you're a fixed earth sign and not known for sort of loving change, right? But you're being asked to embrace the change. But you're leading the way and showing us how we can do this with a grounded approach and slow and steady and one step at a time and focusing on the basics and the simple things, step by step, we'll get there. And so you're showing us that example, and that's the way you need to approach it. The new opportunities and the changes that are happening in relation to you, right? Yourself, and your relationship to yourself ultimately. So that's for you, Taurus. Next, we have Aries, where the new moon is happening in your second house, right? So this has to do with your personal resources, your money, your time, your energy, your material possessions, what you value and what you place worth on, including your own self-worth. So these things are up for renewal. These life themes are up for renewal with this Taurus new moon and being catalyzed by Uranus, right, as I spoke about in the introduction, and challenged by Saturn as well, as I spoke about in the introduction. So definitely listen to the intro for the full picture. So moving on to Pisces now. Pisces, this new moon in Taurus is happening in your third house. So for you, this is about a new beginning in that area of life that has to do with your immediate environment and the people in your immediate environment, which we often consider to be teammates, peers, cousins, siblings, neighbors, community members. The third house also has to do with communications and messages exchanged on sort of the day-to-day, and how we get our message out there. Also has to do with early learning. Okay, things that we're learning that are sort of like the basics, right? And Taurus loves the basics, so that's good news. But it's about quality over quantity, right? Very much Taurian as well in this area of life. And so Uranus is catalyzing this new beginning for you, and you can listen to the intro for the details of that. Moving to Aquarius. So the new moon is happening in conjunction with your ruler, Uranus, and in square to your ancient ruler, Saturn. So, big new moon for you, even though you're not a Taurus. So Aquarius, the fourth house is what's being triggered at this new moon. And that has to do with your home, your family, your sense of emotional security and stability, your place of living, potentially real estate, your roots, relationship to mother figures, this sort of thing. And so the new moon is bringing about some sense of newness in this area, but there is this catalyst, right, of Uranus in the mix, and the challenge from Saturn as well. So listen to the intro, Aquarius, and you'll get all the details. Moving on to Capricorn. Capricorn, the new moon for you is falling in your fifth house. So something new being catalyzed because of the presence of Uranus, and perhaps feeling a bit challenging because of the square from Saturn, in relation to your house of children, your own children or children you work with or associated with, creative projects, your personal sort of creative self-expression, what brings you joy, that could include hobbies and interests, that sort of thing. How you have fun in life. And so this is what's going on for you at the time of this new moon. And again, giving you a glimpse into things to come, as I spoke about in the intro. So that's for you, Capricorn. Moving to Sagittarius. Sag, you've got the new moon happening in your sixth house. So the sixth house is your house that speaks to the tasks you do on the day-to-day, right? All those routines and habits and jobs we do on the day-to-day, whether they be paid or unpaid, how we are in service. Also speaking to relationships between unequals. It has to do with our health and wellness routines and things surrounding health and wellness. Also, pets can fall into this category, Sag. And so for you, something new wants to happen here, right, with this new moon. And Uranus is the catalyst for change. But there may feel like challenges being coming into the picture from Saturn, like I spoke about in the intro. So if this, if you're just listening to the snippet, that's not going to really make sense to you. So definitely listen to the introduction for the context. So that's what's happening for you, Sagittarius. And then Scorpio, you're next. So we've got the new moon happening in your seventh house of your close personal relationships, your one-to-one relationships, significant other, marriage partner, close family members, business partners, rivals, also having to do with contractual obligations and agreements is the seventh house. And so something new is on offer for you here, but there's a plot twist, right? With Uranus, Uranus is catalyzing this. And Saturn is putting some pressure on, some tension. What's old and what's new, Saturn and Uranus, like I spoke about in the introduction. So definitely listen to the introduction for you, Scorpio. And those energies are focused on your seventh house, like I said. Moving to Libra now, where Libra, you have the new moon happening in your eighth house, which is all about your intimate connections, the resources that you share with others. So, things like loans and taxes and debt and insurance, your partner's income and wills, all of these kinds of things. Also, this has to do with issues around psychological, wounding and healing and that kind of thing. And so for you, Libra, something new is happening here. And this new beginning is being catalyzed by Uranus. So it may be, you know, something that comes out of left field a little bit with Uranus in the mix, or something that feels very like uncharted territory. But slow and steady wins the race with Taurus, like I spoke about in the intro. And there may, you know, Saturn is in the picture there, lending a bit of tension to the whole situation. So definitely listen to the introduction so you can get some insight into the bigger picture here. So that's for you. And moving on to Virgo now. Virgo, this new moon is happening in your 9th house. So this is the house that speaks to higher learning, right? Learning beyond the basics. It speaks to our philosophies, our worldview, our belief system, the things we learn from foreign people and places, travel, usually foreign long distance travel, but it can also be sort of armchair travel. You know, all of these things are in focus at the time of this new moon in Taurus, and the newness is being catalyzed by Uranus, right? I keep using that word. Uranus is a catalyst, a disruptor, wanting you to do things different, and being challenged a bit by Saturn, right? Who's saying, no, let's keep everything the same. And Uranus is like, no, we're moving towards the future. So listen to the intro, Virgo, and you'll get the context for what this all means. Next, we have Leo, where the new moon is happening in your 10th house of your public reputation, your persona, your status, your worldly ambition, your career, your legacy, your relationship to authority, including your own authority. And so something new is on offer for you at the time of a new moon. And this new beginning is being charged up by Uranus, right? Catalyzed by Uranus and challenged by the influence of Saturn in Aquarius right now. So, you know, slow and steady wins the race, but it's time to do something different in this department. So don't be afraid of that, Leo. But listen to the intro for the context, okay? And moving on to Cancer now, where we have the new moon happening in your 11th house, Cancer. So this is new beginnings in relation to groups, associations, friendships, networks, internet connections, and the way, you know, you connect online, which is a big thing these days. It's about your hopes and dreams for the future and the people that can help you get there. And so, you know, a new beginning, and this new beginning is saying you need to do new differently. And take it slow because it is in Taurus, but you know, the future is calling, right? Uranus is there in the mix, and then being challenged by Saturn, as I spoke about in the introduction. And so there can be this kind of tension between the old ways and the new ways, right? And we have to take this slow and steady and grounded Taurian approach to manage that. So that's for you, Cancer. And last but not least, we've got Gemini. So Gemini, for you, the new moon is happening in a hidden sort of area of the chart, which is the 12th house. And so this is all about what goes on behind closed doors. It's about how you are, you know, your solitary work kind of thing, the things you do on your own, how you recharge and reflect and spend time in quarantine, potentially, right? But, you know, what goes on in relation to your spiritual life and your connection to, you know, whatever you consider a higher power, and your spiritual wellness, sometimes mental wellness, because this can have to do with those habits that are maybe self-sabotaging, right? And it can also have to do with places that are tucked away from the world, as I always say, you know, like hospitals and spiritual retreat centers and rehab facilities and youth detention facilities and all of these kinds of things. So for you, Gemini, new beginning there, but it's being catalyzed by that sort of electrical shock of Uranus, right? The disruptor, shaking things up in that department and saying it's time to do things differently here. And there may be a bit of challenge from Saturn in Aquarius and a bit of tension to work through. And the way to do that is to really focus on the simplicity of Taurus, taking it one step at a time, connecting to those Taurian themes that we spoke about in the beginning of the video. Definitely listen to the intro. So that's for you, Gemini. And that is all 12 signs. I hope this was helpful. I hope it made sense to you in the context of where we're at right now. And I hope that you are well. And I will talk to you soon. I've been connecting more regularly with my email subscribers, about once a week. And a lot of people are giving me feedback that they really appreciate that. And I'm sharing different things with people there that I don't share elsewhere. So if you're interested in that, then please, you can sign up to my email list. And when you do that, you'll get that free guide to working with the moon that I spoke about at the beginning of the video. Okay, so take good care. I will talk to you soon. Bye for now.